Okay. Members, can I remind you that this meeting will be recorded and ask you to note that mobile phones should be switched off as they interfere with the recording. Tablet devices should be switched to mute. Can I remind members to declare their interest as appropriate throughout the meeting? Can I declare the meeting open to the public? Our first agenda, we have an oral briefing from the Minister. Can I refer members to the final DARD Budget 2015-16 outcome at pages 4 to 8? The January Monitoring Stage 2 update at page 9. The statement by the Minister of Finance and Personnel at pages 10 to 37. And the committee position paper on the DARD Budget at pages 38 to 45. Can I welcome Minister Michelle O'Neill, Noel Lavery, Permanent Secretary, Jerry Lavery, Deputy Secretary, and David Small, Deputy Secretary. You're very welcome. And can I ask you to give your presentation?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Grateful for the opportunity to brief you on the budget. And can I maybe just start by saying a welcome to all the members behind us who've come along to join your committee today, and hopefully we've had a good exchange of conversation on areas of common interest. So appreciate that you're constrained by time, and I'm quite sure the members are going to have a range of questions. So what I was intending to do is just to give you, by way of opening remarks, just some detail that has emerged during what has obviously been a very difficult budget period. We're all very aware of the significant pressures that are facing the dairy farmers at present, and in that context also I want to say that I've prioritised key measures to support the industry and also to boost our rural areas. As I say, I just want to start maybe just by way of providing an overview of my key priorities for the 15-16 year, as well as a summary of the key points that have arisen as a result of the consultation which closed recently. Throughout this budget process, I've been very clear about my key priorities. These have been important in shaping the Department's financial position, particularly given the extent of the savings that need to be delivered in such a short order of time. I've also been very mindful of the various commitments assigned to my department in the programme for government and the important decisions that were made by the Executive in June of last year on CAP reform, Going for Growth, and the Headquarters Relocation Programme. Given this context and the need to deliver unprecedented savings of £29.9 million in a single financial year, I have identified 5 key priorities, and they include the successful implementation of CAP reform, including the launch of important measures within the new Rural Development Programme, implementing the Going for Growth Action Plan, delivering on the HQ relocation projects, continuing to support the measures within the TRIPC programme, and continued investment in flood alleviation work. I trust members will recognise the importance of each of these priorities and my rationale for prioritising each. However, with your indulgence, I want to expand just a little on each one. Firstly, in relation to CAP reform, it obviously represents a very significant change for the industry and for the Department. Indeed, despite aspirations to simplify the process, we are moving to a system that requires multiple payments to farmers, where previously there was only one single farm payment. So I do recognise the challenges and the need to support farmers through the migration to the new schemes and to gain an understanding of what CAP reform means for their businesses. Within the Department, we're investing in our systems, procedures and IT to ensure that the application process is made as accessible and user-friendly as possible for users. I would encourage all farmers to use the online facility to complete their application process, and that will assist them in ensuring their compliance with the scheme rules, as well as helping to improve the payment processing times. In recognition of this need, I've allocated £6.3 million to support the work in this part of the Department, as well as a capital investment of £5.3 million in our IT systems. The financial investment reflects the importance that I place on the modernisation of this function and my commitment to ensure the necessary processes, the procedures and supports are in place to ensure a smooth transition to the new scheme. I am under no illusion about the challenges, and I'm sure there will be issues despite the best endeavours of all involved. However, my commitment to deliver the best outcome for all in the short time that lies ahead remains unequivocal. In relation to rural development, an equally important aspect of CAP reform is the introduction of new schemes under the new Rural Development Programme. Members will be aware of the agreement reached by the Executive in June of last year, which included a commitment to deliver the largest ever Rural Development Programme, with funding up to £623 million being made available. Despite the obvious financial challenges that are facing us, I remain committed to delivering the objectives set out in the programme and ensuring that the necessary funding is made available. A major feature of the new programme will be implementing the recommendations that are contained within Going for Growth Action Plan. The action plan has been agreed by the Executive and funding of up to 250 million will be made available to implement the plan. The significant element of the funding will be required to deliver the Farm Business Improvement Scheme. I'm aware that there is significant interest in the scheme and I'm keen to get the scheme launched as soon as practicable. An important step in the process will be the approval of the Rural Development Programme. As members will be aware, we submitted the programme to the Commission back in October of last year and we had expected to receive queries from them by now. Given the delay in the response from the Commission, we now estimate that the final approval should be achieved by June of this year at the earliest. I have discussed the funding requirements of the scheme with the Finance Minister. However, it is difficult to assess the likely uptake given the obvious issues with cash flow within the industry. It's vital that any decision to invest is based on a sound business rationale, so that any investment made will add value and grow the business. I've therefore secured an additional 1 million of funding as part of the final budget process, so that 2 million of funding is available to support farmers in this decision-making process, and specifically to help them develop a business plan which will be an important part of the application process once the grant scheme is launched. I've also prioritised the new ANC scheme. As many of you will be aware, the LAFACA scheme was a long-standing arrangement supporting those farmers who are constrained by their natural environment. I've therefore included funding of approximately 20 million per annum over the next 2 years for the new ANC scheme. Throughout the consultation process, there was widespread support for that scheme. However, the funding will cease at the end of the 2-year period, and I've asked my officials to carry out a review to assess the future options. Another important part of the RDP is those schemes that fall under the leader approach. And I'm conscious that the current programme is coming to an end, and it's important that we have a degree of continuity in order to maintain the level of investment in rural areas. LEADER is a compulsory part of the Rural Development Programme and provides important community benefits as well as local involvement and local decision making impacting upon rural areas. I think this is a good way to encourage buy-in and enthusiasm among local communities, as we have all have a vested interest in development and improving the lives of rural dwellers. We've had a superb level of interest from people seeking to participate in the new LAGs, particularly from younger members of rural communities. Members will be aware that there is an allocation of £70 million spread across the groups, and I'm committed to ensuring that these opportunities are open as soon as possible once the programme is agreed by the Commission. Turning then to HQ relocation, I've also made the HQ relocation programme a key priority. Again, this is a programme for government commitment that I'm resolved to deliver. In relation to financing the various schemes, I think it's important to re-emphasise that the vast majority of the costs involved are capital in nature and therefore could not be offset against the resource savings of the 29.9 million that the Department needs to deliver. The second point I would make is that the Department needs a new headquarters. That is unavoidable given the regular failings of the current accommodation at Dundonald House. This is a really significant year for our relocation programme. The results of our survey show over 4,000 civil servants want to work closer to home in our new headquarters. By the summer, fisheries will be in Downpatrick, forest servicery will be in Enniskillen, and we have planned and approval for the new building at Lockreed to house Rivers Agency, and we'll let that contract very soon. By the end of 2015, we will also have let the contract for Ballykelly. I believe these relocations will provide people and companies in rural areas with important opportunities for employment and businesses, including the construction sector. They will afford rural people opportunities to have civil service careers and continue to play a part in their local areas. These opportunities have been recognised by the Executive, and I have been allocated a further £1 million of resource funding to progress the relocation programme, bringing the total resource and capital funding budgets to £5.4 million in 15-16. I'm also aware that the committee has been carrying out a review of the TRIPSI programme, which is also a programme for government commitment. And given the important work that this programme delivers, I've maintained the amount of funding available, that's 4.7 million. However, I have rebalanced the mix of funding between capital and resource. We've received a significant amount of support for the programme during the consultation with almost 500 responses. I think this is evidence of the impact that the programme has on the vital services that it provides for the most disadvantaged people in our society. There are a number of schemes funded within the programme, and it may be worth reflecting on some of the figures. Under the Mara project, over 12,000 homes have received a visit, and over 6,000 health checks have been completed in 283 locations. We've also made 67,000 contacts with elderly people living in isolated rural areas and supported 1,100 unemployed people through the Boost scheme. I believe these statistics reflect the positive benefits of just a few of the schemes and their impact on the lives of rural dwellers. It strengthens my resolve to support the programme in future, and I will also be interested in the view of the committee once you have completed your report on the current programme. Turning then just to flood alleviation, I have prioritised the essential flood alleviation work carried out by Rivers Agency. I'm sure we can all relate to the devastating impact that flooding can have on people in the community. I therefore believe that it's important to continue to invest in the infrastructure to try and avoid the worst impacts of flooding in areas that may be impacted. I have therefore protected the Rivers Agency operational budget as far as practicable and allocated 8.5 million of capital funding to allow them to progress a range of projects. Indeed, this funding will allow Rivers Agency to progress its part of the integrated works around Greenaway and East Belfast, as well as upgrading existing infrastructure right across the north. That's a very brief run-through of my key priorities for the next year, and the committee will have an opportunity to scrutinise the associated targets in more detail whenever we present the department's business plan in due course. If I can turn just to the budget consultation itself, we have also kept the consultation running and open up until the 18th of February to inform decisions in the business planning process. So the first stage of the consultation is now closed, and as I said earlier, we've received considerable number of responses, 537 responses to date. As I mentioned, 492 of these were from rural community sector, and this is a high response rate which reflects the importance of the work that's done by DARD in supporting the network of small rural groups. The committee has also received a summary of the range of issues that has been highlighted by all the respondents. In addition to the written responses, I've had a number of meetings with key stakeholders, with the Finance Minister, to discuss the budget proposals as set out in our consultation document. My officials have also delivered presentations to a number of groups to help them inform views and receive feedback. The process has been extremely helpful, and I'm very grateful to all those that have participated and provided responses. And I've already touched on all of the main points that have been raised in the process, particularly the main points, but I think it might be worth highlighting some of the other salient points, particularly around, firstly, staff reduction. A large number of responses raised concerns about the department's plans to reduce its staff and complement, and I fully, obviously, appreciate these concerns. Given that over 50% of DARD budget relates to staff, it's simply not possible to deliver savings of almost 30 million and not impact on the level of staffing. Plans are being developed across business areas to reduce the number of staff by 10%. Measures have been introduced to manage the process internally. We need to deliver payable savings of 5.6 million in the next financial year, which will only be possible with the implementation of a voluntary exit scheme, and I will repeat that it is a voluntary exit scheme. As you will be aware, funding for such a scheme across the public sector has been secured as part of the Stormont House Agreement, and we've advised DFP of our potential requirements. Removing up to 300 staff from the organisation will have an impact, and work is ongoing to redesign the department's operational structure following the implementation of the exit scheme. To inform this process, we are reviewing the key aspects of the department, including the inspection regime, advisory services, including veterinary advice, and the corporate services functions. From my perspective, I want to utilise the opportunity to make the department a more modern, leaner and more efficient organisation that reflects the needs of the agricultural industry. For example, I want to provide greater online provision so that the modern day busy farmer can complete their administration at a time of their choosing, not just the current 9 to 5 provision. And I think that type of 24/7 access is important in supporting an industry that's ambitious and that wants to grow. That was certainly the feedback that I received both from the Agri-Food Strategy Board and the Ulster Farmers Union whenever I met them to discuss the budget position. Whilst they both recognised the difficult financial position, they impressed the need to progress the Going for Growth action plan and provide the industry with the opportunity to deliver growth in all areas of the agri-food sector. We also received a number of responses about the delay in launching the Agri-Environment Scheme, and I met with the RSPB to hear more about their concerns and the issues that they had in their consultation response. Clearly, it's imperative to have the necessary funding in place before launching such an initiative. and indeed to have the necessary approvals in place. I discussed the position with the Finance Minister and will review the position again with him later this year, but it's my intention to have a scheme in place by 2016. The final point, Chair, you'll be glad to hear, that I want to highlight to the committee is the concerns raised by groups and individuals throughout the process about the potential impact that budget cuts will have on all those that live in rural areas. We've already seen cutbacks and provisions in rural areas in relation to hospitals, transport, the recent plight of many dwellers as a result of the financial issues within NI Water. So I'm sure members have also many examples in your own areas or where your own constituents are impacted upon negatively as a result. So I want to raise the issue of rural proofing. You'll know that, or last week I know that you received a briefing on my proposals to bring forward a rural proofing bill on which we'll be consulting on publicly from the 2nd of February to the 13th of March. And I would seek your support in progressing that legislation. It seeks to embed much more firmly the duty to take the needs of rural dwellers into account in government policy making and the delivery of public services. I've also raised the issue of impacts on the rural community with the Finance Minister and reminded executive colleagues of the commitment to carry out a rural proofing assessment where there are major changes to service provisions or introducing new policies. I'm under no illusion that there are many challenges ahead for those living in rural communities, and I believe it's incumbent upon us all to do everything in our power to ensure that the voice of rural people is heard loud and clear in this House and across all government department decision making. So there are many challenges that lie ahead for us for the farming and rural development over the next 18 months and indeed beyond. I have focused my priorities on addressing the challenges. We have a very significant change with the introduction of CAP, a large rural development programme combined with the headquarters relocation functions. And that's all going to be implemented during a time that will see the restructuring of government departments and reducing budgets. So I don't think anybody can underestimate the risks that all bring. However, it is imperative that we all step up to the plate, and I know that it will. I certainly will be redoubling my efforts to ensure that DARD delivers on what is obviously a very ambitious programme of change. So, sorry if that's a bit long-winded, but I was trying to make sure that I covered all bases, but happy to take questions from members.
Okay, Minister, thank you very much for your presentation. When the committee considered the draft budget before Christmas, many of us are concerned that any cuts wouldn't affect frontline services. And indeed, you asked the question in around the payment of single farm payments or the new basic farm payment. Can you give us an assurance that payments times won't slip and that payments will be made in time?
Yes, we've worked very hard over the last number of years, and I know committee have recognised the fantastic progress that we have made in terms of speeding up the payment of single farm payments. I can assure the committee that continues to be my priority, and when it comes to looking at how we deliver services, that is absolutely key. Given all the cash flow issues that are facing the farming industry, receiving your single farm payment in time and indeed receiving your single farm payment early, hopefully will be the position in the future. So I can give an assurance to committee that's certainly a priority for me in making sure that we protect getting those payments out to farmers. Obviously, there are significant changes and we need to take a look at how we do things and how we can do things better and how we can improve things. The more farmers we get to apply online, the more the department changes just systems and practice. I think that all these things are manageable, not without challenges, but certainly manageable. But in terms of actual payments and single farm payments, that will continue to be the priority and will continue to make progress.
Well, as Chairman, I welcome the fact that 90% of single farm payment and farmers that receive single farm payment have received their payments. There is some difficulty in that those that have had remote sensing inspections in May, June, and some rapid field visits after that in August, September, still haven't received payments, and quite a number of those in recent days. There does seem to be a problem whereby local offices are still holding many of these inspections and they haven't yet been forwarded to Orchard House for payment. Is it right that there has been a problem with the IT system that is not comparable with the system of those that carried out remote sensing? Or what is the hold up?
Okay, well, just I think we're somewhere about 98 point something, 90, over 98%.
Over 97%.
87%.
Yeah, have been paid, and we're obviously endeavouring to make sure that those remaining number of people will be paid before March. David, do you want to pick up on
Yeah.
problems are.
Okay, Chairman. Yeah, no, I wouldn't accept that there's a problem with the IT system or its compatibility with the external company that we use from Dublin. Certainly, the more integration we can achieve, the better. But our view is that our systems are working well, our processes are working well. We're, as the Minister has said, we've had a better year this year than ever before. We currently have about 870 single form payment claims still outstanding. About 400, just over 400 of those are inspection cases. The others relate to cases where bank account details are missing or where we're dealing with probate proceedings. So that 872 figure compares to a figure of over 2,000, nearly 2,500 last year. So we have progressed very significantly this year, and we continue to process all of those outstanding inspection cases. Some of them raise difficult issues for us, complex issues, and we need to fulfil our role in terms of examining those cases as thoroughly as we can. But we're committed to complete the payment of inspection cases by end of March this year, again well ahead of last year and the year before. So we're working very hard in terms of ensuring that our processes work as efficiently as they can, and that we deploy the necessary resource to that task. But I accept that where an individual farmer is still waiting on his payment for that farmer. It's still a major issue for him, but we are working very hard.
Okay, no, I've had a number of calls the last few days in regard to this, so that's why I'm making the point. And it's cold comfort. I tell those people that it's 95, 96% paid, but that's cold comfort for them. I had one particular farmer who had direct debits to come out of his bank account on the 20th of January because he thought he had a single farm payment at that time and he has to renegotiate with his bank. So you can understand. And some of the issues are quite minor, not serious issues. That's holding it up, quite minor issues, actually.
They shouldn't be. I mean, if a case is ready for payment, it will be paid. And the processing is quite quick once it reaches that stage. So there shouldn't be cases sitting around with minor issues. Okay.
There's been some mention recently in the media, and regarding the reduction of a number of departments and the possible transfer of some DOE functions to DARD. Can you tell us more about this, or have you said what functions from DOE may be transferred?
Yes, particularly the environmental functions, so everything outside of built heritage. The proposal is that would move into this department. This department would also, Rivers Agency would go into a new department, which I've always said I was very open to have one flood responder in the context of the full restructuring. That I've always said that we're very open to that. So the other area that we would be taking into this department would be the area from decal around inland fisheries. So it's the three changes, isn't that right? Yes. So inland fisheries coming in, Rivers Agency going out, and environmental area of DOE coming in. So obviously all the detail of that has to be worked out, but they're the functions that have been proposed and will be taken forward. There will be a group led by the head of civil service, obviously tasked to report to the executive and take that forward. But I think there'll be benefits in it for us, for the department. One of the areas that even committee has raised in the past has been the issue of inspections and the number of inspections, and are there opportunities both to I suppose to cut down the number of inspections, but also there are obviously opportunities for efficiency. So there's some work already happening within the department around that, but I think there'll be further opportunities with the movement of that element into this department.
Yeah, I think that would be welcome, and hopefully there can be improvements made in regard to that. Joe Byrne.
Thanks, Chairman. Again, welcome, Minister, and your officials. In terms of the voluntary exit scheme and the reform of the department, what policy context are you going to set the redundancies in terms of reform of DARD going forward?
I suppose the thing to not lose sight of the fact that it is a voluntary redundancy scheme. We still don't have the detail of that. It's being worked up centrally through DFP, and we expect to hopefully have that over the next number of weeks. It'll go to the executive for agreement. It's obviously not straightforward by any means, but the thing to remember is that it is a voluntary scheme. There's no proposals here within DARD to obviously to make anybody redundant. This is completely a voluntary scheme, and if staff wish to participate in that, then that'll be their choice.
And can I ask, Minister, in terms of the reform of DARD, is it an objective or not to make DARD a more farm advisory support service friendly to the farmer, rather than a bureaucratic control department which causes greater frustration than it does pleasure to farmers?
Well, there'll always be people out there who have a view as to whether or not they feel the department's too bureaucratic, and we're always trying to cut down on red tape. So, and you know that, and I've said that on many occasions. But I do think that there are opportunities for us here in terms of looking at our operating model, and this is something that we had already started, a piece of work that we already started within the department, how we can move toward more modern technology, how you can get more people applying online. Quite a sizable number of farmers actually apply online. I think that there are more efficient ways to do a lot of the work that we currently are involved with. So as we aim to be as efficient as possible, we should take advantage of looking at the inspection regime, looking at all the other areas of service where both at the coalface where farmers interact with the department, but even internally within the department itself. So there's quite a lot of opportunity for us here to, I think, to improve how we do things and get things better. It's going to be quite challenging, there's no doubt about it, but one of the things I think that will stand to this department is the fact that this is something that's been going on for about a year now, where we've been looking at our operating model, how we do things and how we can do things better.
Thanks, Chairman. Maybe could I just turn to the rural development programme? Obviously, you've managed to get 623 million from the executive, which is very welcome, I think, for the rural communities. In terms of going forward over the next 5 years, what do you hope to achieve out of the new agri-environment scheme, and when will it be finalised? And on the farm business improvement scheme, is it going to be tweaked to help sustain family-based farming, or is it going to be more general rural development at a community level rather than the individual farmer?
Yes, obviously it was excellent news that we were able to secure executive agreement for up to £623 million for the rural development programme. We have our programme currently with Europe and we await approval. As I said in my introductory remarks, it's probably going to be June before we have sign-off. But we're certainly not just sitting back and waiting for that. We're actively involved in trying to, particularly around animation and with local action groups, recruiting for them. We'll be opening up for actual applications over the next number of months also. So there's quite a significant body of work that's currently happening. The Farm Business Improvement Scheme itself is something that I know farmers are watching with interest. They're very keen to know exactly what it entails, what they may be able to apply for. But it is grant aid, so one of the things that we have to do is a lot of preparatory work with farmers around what are their needs, what are their business needs, working with them around a business case, working them around upskilling them around technology transfer, around working with CAFRE advisors. So the money that we have allocated for this financial year is very much focused on doing that preparatory work, which means that families will be able to be in a position to apply into that programme for capital funding as soon as possible thereafter. But very much the focus at the start has to be around working with them. So I suppose the guide that I would use is that I would say to farmers that if it's something that improves your efficiency, it's around, are there ways that you can work with other farmers around efficiency. So I think that it's an interesting time. I know the farmers are very much waiting the detail and we want to be able to provide that detail, but as soon as we have sign-off from Europe, we're keen to start that work very quickly.
And finally, Minister, in terms of trying to sustain smaller family farms in the hill areas, would it be the intention of the department to pursue some sort of scheme as a follow-on to Alfaca to try and sustain that smaller-based family farm enterprise?
Yes, well, the FACA and hill farmers has always been a priority of mine. I've clearly set that out in the budget proposals that I'll continue to prioritise those farmers. Right across all the supports that are there, whether it be everything from grant aid through a farm business improvement scheme, through working with our advisors, those services and those supports are there for everyone. But outside of that, specifically for hill farmers and those that farm hard to farm land, we have the supports in place, and I've guaranteed that, and you'll know that I fought very hard for a well-funded Pillar 2 support package to be able to support those farmers, and I have set out my stall in terms of guaranteeing the funding for the next 2 years. I think sometimes there's a wee bit of confusion around the boundaries and how the boundaries are changing. The disadvantaged area will go. That is a European decision. It's certainly not my decision. But the committee, I know, had some discussion last week around the fact that we're going to try and create a soft landing for those people that are going to no longer receive that support for the disadvantaged area, and they'll receive their payment for next year also this year. So I was grateful for the committee for agreeing for that piece of work going forward.
Thanks. Thank you, John.
Okay. Tom Buchanan.
Yeah, back briefly to the single farm payments, and we do commend the department on what they already have done and what has been delivered on. I think that has to be acknowledged. But again, like the chair, there are some people who are getting on to us and saying, look, we haven't got it, there's a problem, or we're really waiting on one thing and another. What is the situation? You know, you did say about some of the ones that are outstanding as bank details or something else. Is it the case? Is it not the case that there is a problem for a number of these, maybe up to 200 of them, that are sort of stuck in the system somewhere, and some of them even have to be manhandled manually in order to get them processed? Is that right or not?
No. I mean, each case will be processed in the normal way. The first critical part of that is the inspection. In some cases, it's the classical inspection process with someone going on farm. In other cases, a remote sensing inspection, which is done by satellite image. Yeah. In some cases, that requires a further field visit. But we're currently working with some very, very large inspections. You know, enormous farms. Now that won't be the case, I know, in every case. But once that inspection process has been concluded, the case will then be processed through to payment. Yeah. But we need to make sure that we do that bit of the process robustly and do it well. And where there are doubts over a field type or a land use or areas of ineligibility, we need to make sure that we have exhausted the inspection findings and made firm conclusions, so that we're then confident that the case can process the payment.
Yeah, we understand that, but all right. But it's fair to say then you're telling committee today that there's no difficulty at all with the computer systems as far as the aerial-based inspections were carried out or done.
No problems with the computer systems. We have been investing in a brand new geographic information system, which will roll out right across the department. The delivery of that system has been a bit slower than we would have hoped, but we are currently working on the existing systems that we have used, you know, over the last 4 or 5 years, and that system is in place. We're deploying that system this year. Over time, we would hope to transfer everything onto a new GIS platform with additional functionality, which will bring with it improvements. But we just haven't reached that stage yet. That has been a bit slower than we would have hoped, and I think that's maybe what you're referring to.
Well, maybe that'll help to alleviate some of the concerns that we're getting there. The other thing, Minister, was the 300 staff that you're talking about going, and you're talking about this voluntary exit scheme. How confident are you that we're going to get 300 staff within the department to go on a voluntary exit? And for instance, if you only get 200 or 250, what do you do then? How do you get that made up to the 300? What plans have you for that?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the difficulty. We don't know the quantum. We don't know the number of staff that are going to come forward. I mean, I suppose there's some anecdotal evidence out there to suggest that there's quite a number of people that would want to go. But again, until I think people and staff see the ins and outs, the detail of actually what it is that they're going to be entitled to, they won't be able to make a decision. So it very much is a personal decision for them. As soon as we have the detail of that, we'll obviously share that with staff, and we'll be able to have a proper assessment then of the actual numbers that they'll come forward. If we don't reach 300, which is the figure that we've used as in terms of the amount of money that we would have to find in the budget, then we'll have to come back to obviously more analysis of just what it is that we can do within the budget that we have.
One other issue, Chair.
Sorry, if you want, just Noel wanted to add to that.
No, I mean, it is pretty unprecedented, the launch of a voluntary exit scheme. And I don't know, someone who's been around as long as Jerry can remember the scheme. But so it is quite uncertain.
The pensioner, yeah.
Sorry?
Is that a pensioner yet?
Don't want to be accused of anything there. But, you know, essentially, as the Minister said earlier, our 5.6 million is an estimate, and that's the budget pressure. If we aren't able to release those staff savings and make those staff costs make those payroll savings, it's a pressure on the budget, which ultimately is probably a pressure on programme budgets, which is a frontline payment in the end. So that's why we're keen, but it is pretty unprecedented, so we'll keep the committee informed.
Yeah, and Chair, one other issue, Minister, you did talk about streamlining and efficiency, which is commendable, although challenging as it is. And the other thing that you talked about, which I was interested in, was the rural proofing. So to put the two together, then that's, you know, it's a good news story in one way. But how will that affect the laboratory services at Omagh? It's the only other laboratory service west of the Ban, for the agriculture community west of the Ban. There's nothing else there for it. There is concern looming around that. Now, I appreciate it's a constituency issue, but it's a big issue in that area. And I'm just wondering, is that safe?
Well, all politics is local, so I wouldn't expect you not to raise the issue. But in terms of the rural proofing bill, if I start with that, for me, what we have, the system that we have, could certainly be improved. I think there's certainly room for improvement, and particularly around ensuring that all departments at all times rural proof all the decisions that they take in terms of the needs and assessing the needs of rural communities. This is something I believe that is doable within this mandate, introducing a statutory duty on all departments and also local government, because obviously councils now have a key role with the whole restructuring, and they have a key role in terms of the service they provide to rural dwellers. So for me, whilst it's a small piece of legislation, it's actually got quite major impact in terms of the future and how all departments assess their services, and I look forward to actually having probably a more detailed discussion with the committee on that in the time ahead. In relation to Omagh and to AFBI, I suppose the broader picture with AFBI is that the department has commissioned work of about £42 million with AFBI, and we continue with that work programme, which is quite a substantial area of work around research, development and all of that. In terms of the Omagh Lab, there's no proposal on my desk for a discussion around the closure of Omagh Lab, although I'm quite sure it's in the mix of AFBI's own individual discussions. My officials have been working very closely with AFBI around getting them to a place where they present us with proposals just in terms of how they're going to find their 7% savings. But I think all decisions, and I would ensure that all decisions are taken in a fair and balanced approach, but certainly there's no, as part of this draft budget process and for this financial year, there's nothing on my desk to suggest that Omagh is an issue that's been, it's not on my desk for a decision. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tom has to go for question. Tom next. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Minister and officials. Apologies, I wasn't in just for a start. Apologies, I have to rush after as well because I go to do a question. I don't want to run the ire of the Speaker. A couple of points, Minister. First was around the inspections again, and I know the conventional, traditional inspections, if people are waiting for their single farm payment, those are taken in chronological order, but the remote inspections don't seem to be. And nobody can get into contact with the external company to track progress. I have to say, the department's quite very good. Whether you go to your local office, they'll tell you where it is. If you go to Orchard House, they'll tell you how long it is until payment. But nobody can tell you in progress of the external company. Not even the department officials don't seem to have contact.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that would be an issue, Tom, because you know the external company Icon will be presenting the department with their findings. As I understand it, we've got those findings. You know, so everything is now within the departmental process.
But we can't find out progress on individual inspections.
But you wouldn't get that advice from the external.
But I'm wondering why not. If the inspection is within, if it's a conventional inspection within DARD,
yeah,
they can tell you, look, we have some problems here. We're going back to the applicant or the farmer. We're trying to get them addressed. Hopefully it'll be done in a couple of weeks. But you can't find that progress, or you can't get that progress with the external operator.
You should get it from the department.
I know I've contacted the department the local office, and they tell you they can't get it, we can't get it?
Well, I'm happy to check that.
Would you
point
be
out
grateful
separately.
if you would, because there's quite a lot of them.
But
I can split you and say it.
certainly the process is that the findings will come into the department to my colleagues, and we will then begin to identify what has been presented, you know, and that then goes into the process of us validating what we've got and then processing
So you're saying your officials at the county office should be able to find out progress from the external company?
I'll check the point and come back to
Okay,
you.
appreciate that.
Happy to do that, yeah.
Second query, Chair, is around, we have a letter in today's pack, you may not be aware of it, but it's from NIEA, from DOE, NIEA, and they have it in their words, obviously they're trying to develop better relationships with their inspections on farms, but they have said that they have initiated, as they term it, a root and branch review, of which they have brought forward 4 operating principles. I've been a great and long-time believer in better cooperation between departments, and that there should be a single inspection mechanism between departments. How aware, or are you aware at all, of this review by NIEA, and what input have you had to it? Because it doesn't mention you.
Well,
Well, obviously NIA are in the lead, and given that they're responsible to DOE, but I'm quite sure we have. So I'm not sure if you were here earlier when we had a conversation just around the inspection regime and about how, around the review, the change in the departments, and with NIA moving into DARD, I think that will make it easier for us to get to the position where we have, hopefully, a single inspection regime. But I'll ask David just to pick up on the...
that's it. I'll just pick up. You know, Terry Hearn, current Chief Executive of NIA, had written to UFU, I think, flagging this, and copied us in, so I was aware of it. And David and I actually are meeting Terry on Thursday to discuss how we can progress inspections and more streamlined inspection regime, and then of course with NIA.
But you obviously had no input to the root and branch review.
No, they were undertaking that themselves. That's why we've contacted NIA. We'll say, well, how can we work better together?
I'd appreciate if you'd tell them it would have been helpful if you could have been involved, not at an earlier stage, because, you know, the 2 departments really need to work together in this, and obviously you haven't been, and you haven't in this root and branch review.
There's also obviously the new factor at play now, given that the executive has agreed to the restructuring of
Yeah.
departments. So it's obviously key that if that's coming into
Yeah, and I
this
think,
department.
Minister, that's why it would have been important to have that cooperation before this root and branch review took place.
But yes, that's fair enough.
Okay. Final question, Chair, just any progress on our assistance to the dairy industry?
Progress, well, obviously it's an ongoing issue, and we're trying to do all that we can to assist the industry from, I suppose, a number of fronts, given both at EU level. We're obviously engaging with Commissioner Hogan. We've asked him to look at the intervention price that's paid. We've asked him to look at the issue of EU dairy exports. Unfortunately, we haven't had a positive response to that as such, or at this stage, but we haven't given up, and we'll continue to do that. We've also raised the issue with DEFRA, Secretary of State Elizabeth Truss, and we've actually written to her in recent days again. You'll also be aware that we've met with the banks just before Christmas around asking them for a bit more flexibility and a bit of sympathy, if you like, for those people that find themselves in difficulty because of the cash flow issues. There's also the issue, committee will probably be aware that UFU have raised around the potential changes to the tax system that would have a major impact on farmers, and that's something that I'm certainly very supportive of and have raised with Simon Hamilton. So quite a number of challenges, and I suppose we're coming at it on a number of fronts, and that's, I suppose, alongside all the work that the department does with our CAFRE advisors. And the one clear message that I send out to all the dairy industry is seek advice. If you're in difficulty, seek advice as early as possible. We're finding more and more that a lot of people are waiting until things are just unmanageable for them, and we want to be able to provide whatever advice that we possibly can within the department. So quite a challenging time for the dairy industry given the fall in price. The longer term outlook is good. However, if you're sitting today struggling to be able to pay your bills and to keep yourself going, then it's a very, very challenging time.
The longer term outlook, from when would that be?
We're talking in the future in terms of the markets opening up around, with the Russian bans obviously having an impact now. We've had the increase in production in New Zealand. So there's quite a number of factors at play, but I think that all economists, all the dairy industry themselves, their spokesperson, all agree that the outlook in the longer term is better, but we won't have people to produce if we don't get through this very difficult period.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for.
Yeah. Oliver McMullen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, and your officials for your presentation. Minister, given its importance, are you confident that the budget has protected the TRIPSI programme?
Yes, as I said at the start, I've set out my priorities and very clearly the TRIPSI budget has, in terms of what has been delivered to date, has been very effective. Not least the MARA project, the Assisted Rural Transport project, the work we did with youth in terms of employability. Right across all the areas of work that we were involved with in the previous programme, we spent out our budget and it's really been very successful. It's been very successful on a number of fronts, not least that we were able to leverage in funding from other departments to actually get involved in areas of work that perhaps they may not have been able to do if we hadn't have got involved. I have restructured the funding and going forward in that we have a bit of a shift in terms of the money that's in the resource budget and the capital budget, but we're able to bring forward some new initiatives which we hope to bring forward over the next year around rural transport, around a small capital grant scheme for rural community groups. We'll be doing more work on rural broadband. We'll be doing some work on fuel poverty. So quite a number of busy area of work for us going forward, but we absolutely have to build on what was obviously so successful in the past.
Okay. Declan McAleer.
Thanks, Chair. Minister, I noted there at the outset you said that one of your priorities was the relocation programme, and obviously that seems to be very popular amongst your staff, given the level of interest there is and people working closer to home. I wonder if you could just give me a wee update on that there, and also the fact that, as I said earlier, all politics is local, that one of the proposals was a Dara Direct that was being developed in Strabane. Could you give a wee little update on that, please?
Yep. Well, we're obviously, again, an area that I've prioritised is the relocation moves. Headquarters to Ballykelly, Fisheries to Southdown, Forestry and Enniskillen, and Rivers Agency into Lochary. So we're full steam ahead in all of those areas. We hope to be in Enniskillen and Southdown by the summer of this year. We'll have let the contract for both Rivers Agency and Ballykelly by the end of this year. And I think that you referred to the numbers of staff that have actually indicated a willingness to want to move. Clearly shows that there's a demand within the public sector for people to have a better work-life balance. There's a demand for people to want to find employment closer to home. So that to me shows that it's the right policy, and staff have clearly voted with their feet in terms of that one. So we're moving forward with that. In terms of Strabane Dara Direct, one of the benefits of Strabane Dara Direct is the fact that it's a co-location project with other services. So the fact that DSD and Dale are also moving on to that site, that allows us to have efficiencies. And given the economic climate that we're in, obviously that is something that we should all be striving towards. So I'm keen to get that delivered on. It's going to be the first opportunity actually for us to enter into a joint venture, and but certainly for me the co-location is the advantage that Strabane has, the fact that we're able to co-locate with other services.
Thank you. And something else I down just there a second. You said, Minister, that it could be June at the earliest by the time the Commission will sign off on the draft programme. I know it might be difficult to project, but do you envisage that how quick after they would sign off the programme before it would be open for applications? You know, that's the Farm Business Improvement Scheme, or even any of the other Priority 6 programmes?
Yeah. Well, in terms of Priority 6, and that work's ongoing. We've hopefully be finalising the LAG board members this week, or certainly over the next couple of weeks, if not all this week. Then they can start their work around, animation work has already commenced, so that will allow us to be able to open, hopefully, for actually taking applications in advance of June, so we're not waiting until we get the approval. You'll remember one of the criticisms of the current programme was the fact that it took so long maybe to get spent in the ground and get things moving. We definitely don't want that to be the case this time round. I think we've put all the things in place that we needed to in terms of being able to hit the ground running with getting spend out there as soon as possible. But certainly I would expect maybe by about April time that we'll be actually be accepting applications. On the Farm Business Improvement Scheme, it's going to be more towards the end of the year. We're working our way through that programme detail now, but certainly towards the end of the year when we start doing the work that I talked about earlier around assisting farmers around identifying their needs and looking at what would be advantageous for them for their individual farm business.
And just, I think, in advance of that, we'd hope to be able to launch the discussion groups, which again
Yes.
would be a forerunner to that.
Yes. So that's as part of the Farm Business Improvement
Yeah.
Scheme. One of the areas that we looked around was forming discussion groups, and that's something that is very much been welcomed by the industry. So we hope to get those started in
Yep.
June.
Later this year.
Yeah.
Can I just follow on that one second? What's the discussion group? What do they consist of? Or?
It's a business development group where a group of farmers come together and they're facilitated and assisted in terms of a range of issues, but one of the issues will be around this business investment scheme and planning for the scheme, thinking about the business plan around what they intend to do, make sure that it's viable, that it makes sense, good business sense for them. So it's a process where farmers are brought together in a group, and they learn from each other. They learn through peer learning, and facilitated in doing that.
It's trying to help
It's,
farmers to help themselves in terms of skilling them up and giving them the confidence and just that wee bit of maybe exchange of views and experiences and help them to obviously make then the best decisions for themselves around. Because even if you are getting granted, obviously they have an investment themselves to make. So it's about trying to help them work through that whole process.
It's an arrangement that's been used in the south and it's proved to be very successful.
Thank you, Chair.
Sidney Anderson.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, and your team for coming along today. Most of the points have been touched on that I was hoping to speak on, but can I just touch maybe on the staffing there, 300 you talk about, and the possibility of maybe not getting 300. Will they be spread across the different areas within the department, or are you looking, what I'm trying to get at here, if say a number was to come out of one area, surely that would have an effect on that particular operation. Would you be looking at that to try and spread, say, well, sorry, but I don't think you'll be able to leave here because we need you here because of the number of staff leaving? Is there going to be restrictions in that sort of way?
Well, obviously the detail of the scheme is still being worked up, but I suppose that's a problem for every department. So obviously the head of civil service, in terms of drawing up that scheme, that's being factored in because and if you take any area service and you take everybody out of that area service, then the service doesn't exist. And one of the examples that was used to me is actually nurses. If you took all the nurses in a ward who decided to leave, then so that's not manageable. So we've been working our way, as I said, we are a wee bit more advanced, I think, in terms of other departments, in relation to other departments, in terms of looking at how we can improve things and where we can, I suppose, have room for a bit more movement. But Jerry has been working very
Has there been any looking at numbers to date over the areas? I'm sure you know the position you're moving into, and I'm sure someone somewhere, maybe yourself, has looked at certain numbers as to possibilities of numbers coming from the different areas, and the possibilities will present themselves.
We have, but I mean, as Permanent Secretary said earlier, there isn't really an experience recently of a voluntary exit scheme in the civil service, so we've nothing to build on in terms of the appetite for the scheme. What we have done is we have begun to prepare mechanisms that will allow us to work quickly after the scheme to work out where the people are coming from and how would we move staff into those areas to replace the people who come out. So it'll be a case of identifying the priority services that we really must deliver. And we've referred to some of them earlier. The Minister's referred to the basic payment scheme. Priority areas that we must deliver on and ensuring that they are staffed to deliver that service within the available budget. and that will mean moving staff around. So we're already talking to staff at the moment, saying to them, you're going to need to be more flexible maybe than you have been in the past. You need to be prepared for a change in your job, to be asked to work in a different system that you've been working on. So that's what we're doing. And then we should know the appetite from staff, I would hope, in the spring, with the first people leaving in the autumn. So we'll have a bit of time in there to prepare the ground.
Will the staff be given consideration as regards, I know you're talking about the forestry and the fisheries and going to different locations here, and where they would have to work? Would you be saying to them, like, distance travel or moving home or whatever it likes, or will you be trying to facilitate that the staff will be looked after in such a way that they'll not be pushed into decisions where, I think I know where I'm coming from here.
A couple of things. Well, one, I always give assurance that as part of the relocation projects that it wasn't my intention to ever force anybody to want to move anywhere. Jerry has said, we have to look at just where the areas of priority are, how can you move people around. I think until we get the actual number of people that are interested in moving, those things are still in flux and we have to work our way through them. I think the other point I wanted to make is that any changes, particularly in relation to staff, this is people's livelihood we're talking about, so have to be done in consultation with both them, but also with their trade union reps as well. So that's been very important to me and something that I've expressed very strongly in the department. That's how I want to see it taken forward.
Okay, can I go back to the Rural Development Programme and the formation of the LAGs? I think, Minister, you did say about young people coming forward, and what's the present situation and getting the LAGs set up for the commencement of the programme, and what lessons probably what I'd like to know is past lessons from previous programmes. I did have occasion to sit on previous programmes, and I could see some of the difficulties. Have we learned lessons that maybe would be of benefit this time running and more for the smooth running of the new programme as it rolls out? This 623 million over the next 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, firstly, in terms of the recruitment of new members, we, I think we had, in the end, over 2,000 people applied. That's, really significant. You would know if you've sat in the lag before, sometimes it's hard to get people, to come forward and to volunteer their time to get involved. So we're very grateful for all those people, and there'll be a role for all of them in terms of the wider lag group. We're actually finalising, and I think this is the same right across the board, finalising the actual recruitment to the board. So the smaller group of people that will be involved in taking the day-to-day decisions. But so I think that's actually being completed. Maybe David will keep me right, but I think it's this week, certainly over the next couple of weeks.
It's over the next couple of weeks, yeah. And as the Minister says, we've had a very, very positive response, from people expressing interest in joining the wider LAG and becoming members of.
I had a focus on trying to recruit women and young people to come forward, and that clearly was evidenced in the numbers of people that have come forward and the range of people that have come forward. But lessons learned, yes, absolutely. I mean, there had to be lessons learned, and that was very much part of the process of us with the wider rural development stakeholder group, is that what you call it, that comes together just for, we very much looked at those people that were actually involved on the ground, delivering, that were able to pick up the things, for example, that if you wanted £1,000 grant aid or you wanted £10,000, or if you even take another extreme, 1,000 and 100,000, and the application forms being similar, it shouldn't be the same. So we looked at sort of practical ways we could improve things, and certainly that's what we've been striving to do. Have we got it all right? Well, time will tell, but we've certainly improved things, and I'm confident that there'll certainly be a marked improvement just on some of the things.
I think we all realise that there have to be lessons learned, and there's a number of projects got bogged down and log jammed in the system, and I would like to think going forward we did learn a lot, and that those things would be streamlined and the programme could roll out a lot more efficiently and effectively going forward, and I look forward to that. And just finally,
We're very pushed for time.
Right, okay.
Is that okay?
Okay.
No, Kieran didn't get in. He's the only person who didn't get in, so I want to give him a credit.
Mr. Chairman, thanks very much, and apologies for not being here earlier. Minister, apologies for not being here to hear. I'm sure that if my question has been asked,
and answered, forgive me, but I'm going to ask it anyway, and that is the fishing industry. Has anyone raised it with you? No. So you did have some success at your December meeting, which we're all very grateful for. A lot of work still to be done. Could you tell the committee, or can you see, you forecast better prosperity for our fishing fleet as the year goes on, and your department is not sitting still and waiting until the December of next year to go and try and get another bit of the crumbs come and fall from the Brussels table?
Well, I'll start off with why we go to Europe every December is to obviously get a quota for the following year. I don't even agree with that process. I think even Simon Coveney, the Minister in the South, would agree that the annual allocation of a quota isn't sufficient to allow the fishing community to be able to plan for their future. It's like any business. If you're working year on year, it's very difficult to plan for the future. So take that aside from that, the department's working closely with the industry. You know, I've established the Fishing Task Force, which is working to look at what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, what are the needs. And we expect that there'll be some positive work comes out of that. The issue of, decommissioning scheme, all those things are all being discussed at that task force. We have a very strong fisheries department. You'll also know that we are moving our fisheries department to South Down. And that's all something that's bringing the fishing community close, obviously, to ports. But outside of all that, there's quite a substantial body of work going on. They're going for growth targets, obviously, in relation to the fishing industry. I'm very interested in the aquaculture industry and how we can assist them. We're going to have an all-island conference on aquaculture, which we've taken forward through the North-South Ministerial Council. So there's quite a gamut of work in terms of supporting the fishing industry.
Okay, Karen.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Joe, want a quick question?
Yeah, Chairman, just a quick one. In relation to AFBI, there's a cut of 3 million to their budget. And in relation to the Agri-Food Strategy Board being concerned about the research going forward in relation to the going for growth, Minister, would you give serious consideration to having an encouragement of joint research in the agri sector between AFBI and Teagasc in the Republic? I'm conscious of the fact that we've had our fellow committee from the Dáil here today, but it would seem to make sense in terms of economies of scale and sort of expertise and research and innovation that some encouragement should be given to AFBI to have joint collaboration with Teagasc. And I would like you and the department to give serious consideration to that.
Absolutely, and I'm fully supportive of that. I have actually spoken to Teagasc about it, and I have raised it with AFBI, with Colin McKenna, and I know that he has recently met with Teagasc just around where the areas that can be explored further. But yes, absolutely, in this climate, we have to work together. It makes sense. Particularly, I think there's potential around quite a number of areas, but not least the around the beef industry, around I'm trying to think of something in particular which won't come to my head right now. Something we just discussed. Genomics, yes, around genomics. So I think that yes, there's absolutely opportunities there, and I've encouraged AFBI to explore them, and I know that Teagasc themselves are also up for that. So I think that's very positive, and we need to push that as far as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Just before you go, just a quick question on the new NAPA system. Some of the committee had concerns, or many in the committee had concerns about the proposal to spend between 25 and 30 million on new NAPA system. Some people thought that was going over the top and we were going for a Rolls-Royce system. Has the department looked at this again, or what's the current position?
I've listened to that, and you have to remember what it does, what the system does. The system, obviously underpins the traceability of our industry. It is something that can provide an assurance of our produce. So it's something that I don't think that you can underestimate the value of. And I think whilst the headline figure probably sounds quite large, if you break it down into year on year, and this is the ongoing maintenance of the system, everything inbuilt. And if you look at it that way, you're talking approximately up to about £4 million a year, is that right? So, I think if you look at it and what we're getting for it, what we're getting in terms of value for money is for me very beneficial.
And I think the committee are getting a briefing on this next week. I think, is that right?
Yeah, it's okay. Okay. Listen, time is gone. Thank you very much for your presentation, for taking our questions. Thank you.
Let's go to the chamber.
No, they're not.
Environment, no, that's the regional development land zone.
I'll wait for a minute. The fact is still straight.
Can we move on to agenda item 2? Have we any apologies? We have one from Ian Milne. Okay. Any other apologies? No, we've no other apologies. Agenda item 3, chairperson's business. Can I advise members that an informal meeting took place today with the Committee for Agriculture, Food and the Marine. Issues discussed included the dairy industry, all-out animal health, trade of cattle and sheep, and the rural development plan. Agenda item 4, minutes of the meeting 20th of January 2015. Can I refer members to draft minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of January 2015 at pages 49 to 53. Are members content that the draft minutes are accurate?
Agreed.
I will then sign. Okay. Agenda item 5, matters arising. Can I refer members to matters arising at page 56 to 58? Can I ask members to consider the letter from the NI Farming Group, who have requested a copy of the legal advice that the committee received on its proposal for farm gate prices legislation. The clerk has advised that such legal advice is privileged and is not normally released to third parties. It is proposed to write back to the NI Farming Group on that basis. Any response will need to be cleared with legal services. Are members content with this approach?
Agreed.
Okay. Are members content to action the matters arising as suggested on the index sheet on page 55? Okay. Agenda item 6, written briefing, Guard SL1, less favoured area Company Alliance, LFA-CA 2015. Members will recall that this was an agenda item last week and clarification was sought from the department. The response from the department is at page 60 to 61. Members can also find the memo from the clerk at page 62 to 63 and briefing papers from the department at page 64 to 78. Now that the clarification has been provided, can I seek comments from members? Members happy to progress, let the department progress this?
Yeah, great.
Okay, great. Okay. Right, can I seek then that the policy is to proceed to the next legislative stage, so everyone agrees with that, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Agenda item 7, oral briefing Guard cross-compliance legislation. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at page 80 to 81 and papers from the department at pages 82 to 96? Before I ask for this to come to the table, can I refer members to the table paper from the UFU on cross-compliance and cattle tags that you should have in your pack? Can I welcome Andrew Elliott, grade 5, Richard Crowe, grade 5, David Gillespie, Agriculture Inspector, grade 2, and Ken Laverty, Deputy Principal. Can I ask that you take no more than 10 minutes to address the committee, and then we will ask some questions. Okay?
That works very much, yes. It's good to be back with you again. I'm just going to pour this a very mild cold, and just in case. We sent a very short paper to you covering the various issues as we saw them that had arisen at the last meeting, where the committee had a number of concerns across a range of cross-compliance issues. So we thought it would be useful to come back to you on all of those, and hopefully we can be quite positive on some of the issues and perhaps slightly less positive on others. The first thing I want to say is very grateful to the committee for bearing with us on the regulations as we needed them to be in place for the start of 2015. Appreciated the movement of the committee on that issue, and now really we really do want to look carefully at the various issues that have been raised as we go forward towards 2016. So just taking the issues in order, starting with issue 1, which was the irrigation authorisations, where there were limits on the amount of water that can be abstracted from ground or surface water taken off or from around fields. Essentially, the big issue there is that these are standards that are taken directly from the Abstraction and Impoundment Licensing Regulations, Northern Ireland 2006. So in other words, there's a regulatory basis for these rules, which is not to do with cross-compliance. In 2010, the cross-compliance rules were brought into line by the Commission with those regulations, and it isn't really within the gift of the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development to change that regulation. Having said that, it's also important, I think, to point out that I think members raised the issue of what appeared to be maybe just a tanker full of water that could be abstracted from a sheach, and whether that was enough. But as I understand it, when NIEA applies the rules, once a farmer has obtained an authorisation or indeed a licence for a larger amount of water, that carries on indefinitely unless there's some particular reason why the Northern Ireland Environment Agency would have to intervene to stop it. So in fact, in terms of its, the level of bureaucracy associated with it, in most circumstances, it should be very much a one-off where a farmer is able to obtain permission to abstract water. The second issue relates to GAEC 4. And that's in relation to the issue of minimum soil cover and the standards in relation to winter cultivation and when that is possible. And there was quite a long discussion on that the last day. Essentially what we have now are prepared to commit to do is to review the position on that with NIEA. And that review is already beginning, is underway, so that we can, if necessary, have changes to that ready for 2016. The changes, of course, have to depend very much on the evidence, but we do think it is timely for us to look at the evidence base and to make sure that in the context of Northern Ireland's particular circumstances, that guidance is, that those rules are the correct ones or the best ones that we can have going forward. I'm happy to take questions on that later. Picking up on the third issue, which is about the retention of landscape features, in other words, hedge cutting dates, and the committee was very keen for us to look at the situation in England and to consider a derogation. We have been preparing terms of reference for a review in that regard, so that we will look at that and will open consultation with those who had an interest in that issue during the previous consultation. So the various stakeholders that have an interest in that will be consulted about whether or not we can introduce a derogation in relation to hedge cutting in certain circumstances in August. If that derogation is after the review is granted, it is important to say that it isn't all good news for farmers, in the sense that a derogation of itself leads to a requirement for prior permission. So it's not like cutting outside the season, you need to get the prior permission. It also leads to more inspections and also to an increase in costs associated with that. But having said that, there are certain farmer groups who consider that there's an important issue here, and we do need to consider it and look at the evidence with those stakeholders. In terms of issue 4, which is GAE7 and the retention of landscape features, that was really about the issue about the rights of a farmer, when a farmer can cut down trees. And I think that one of the things that I need to say about that is that this really applies to trees with a diameter of 100 centimetres or more. And if you think about that for a moment, that's a very large tree. That's the kind of a tree that I think many people would like to see protected. It's a very, very large diameter, and it doesn't apply to trees that are smaller than that. So in the circumstances, we think it's actually a fairly reasonable rule. We did go and take a look at that to take care that it wasn't affecting farmers with smaller trees. It's 100 centimetres in diameter, so we really don't see an enormous case for changing that rule in terms of the balance of the position as it stands at the moment. So that's not one where we were proposing to move, but we can talk about that further. The two other issues arose in terms of general cross-compliance issues that I wanted to discuss as well. The fifth issue really is the rationalisation of the cross-compliance inspection regime. And I think some views were put that perhaps there were inspections that were currently being carried out by NIEA that could be carried out by DARD, and there were some issues raised about how the Northern Ireland Environment Agency carries out its inspections and the approach of the inspectors and so on. I suppose one big shift that has happened since the last meeting is that there are proposals now in relation to the adjustment of the number of departments, and it would appear that parts of the Northern Ireland Environment Agency and the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development may become somewhat closer to each other in the future, depending on the outworkings of executive decisions. But it is the case that we can, of course, look at what scope there is there to, if it's possible, to reduce the burden. One of the things to say is that there was an issue raised, I think, about the number of inspectors that was required to carry out an inspection. In the Department of Agriculture, for the vast majority of circumstances, we carry out inspections with a single inspector. There are some circumstances where we insist on there being a second inspector present. That happens in circumstances usually where we judge that there may be some kind of health and safety threat to the idea of a single inspector. The Northern Ireland Environment Agency has that approach as well, but I understand that because of the fact that they deal with issues such as slurry and so on, that there is an additional risk there that they have to factor in relation to being in and around slurry pits. So their judgments on that are a matter for the NIEA, but it is, I would expect, probably related to health and safety. That's certainly what they've informed us in the majority of cases. And then issue 6, which I wanted to cover, was the thresholds used by the department to determine if keepers of bovine animals, of cattle, have an acceptable tag replacement policy in place. And I know the committee was keen for the department to look at the approaches to this issue being taken in the rest of the UK and in the Republic of Ireland. In responding to that, one of the things I wanted to talk about was the word several. It's very clear in the guidance that the Commission expects us to respond if it's more than one or several bovines that are found with tags missing, and each paying agency has to make a judgment about whether what number several might be. In the context of any dictionary definition of several that I've been able to find, I think we take a fairly lenient approach to several. And I know that the Commission has audited England in relation to this particular issue and has taken a fairly firm line. In relation to that, the Commission would say that, and I'm just looking here for the precise words that were used, that the Commission considers that it is the farmer's professional responsibility to ensure that all his or her bovines are correctly identified with 2 applied ear tags at all times and not only within 28 days after an inspection. So that's a quotation from Commission correspondence. The audit has not worked through to the disallowance stage yet in England, but England has been trying to defend its position, and that I think is still ongoing. But the Commission has concluded that this audit observation leads to a direct risk to the funds, so a disallowance penalty is almost inevitable. So there's a fairly strong line being taken there by the Commission. So we are trying to strike the right judgment in relation to those rules. Having said all that, and that makes it extremely difficult for us to change the rule as such, we think there is some scope for movement here. And the movement that we think it is possible to have is in relation to the impact of the penalty that is deployed. So we have a weighting that leads to a certain penalty outcome. And if we adjust and reduce that weighting where it is only one ear tag that's missing, because in a lot of circumstances that provides a certain assurance because the other ear tag is still there, we could potentially reduce the impact, the burden of this regulation on the farming industry, and potentially quite significantly, without actually in any way interfering with the concerns of the auditors that, as expressed in England. Now, we looked at taking what we call the seriousness score, which is currently sitting at the present time at 0.4, and reducing that to 0.1. And that sounds very sort of theoretical and so on, but in practical terms, we then ran a model of this on the 2012 inspection results to see what that would mean, for example, for farmers who had over 100 animals with an ear tag missing, and who received a 5% penalty on their single farm payment. In that year, the number of farmers penalised was 36. So 36 farmers received a 5% penalty. If we applied the new rule that we're suggesting to you today, that number would have dropped to 3. Okay, so there would have been a very significant reduction in the number of farmers who would have faced a 5% penalty. Now, some of those would have still had a 3% penalty or a 1% penalty, but all the way down the line it would have eased the burden. So we think that's something where we can recognise the concerns of the committee, ease the burden on the farming community, but still protect ourselves against disallowance. And so, in a sense, that is what I would offer to the committee or suggest to the committee today by way of a way through on this issue. So those were the main issues that we picked up and identified as being the Commission's concerns in the area of cross-compliance and GAEC. I'm very happy now to take questions on those.
Okay, Andrew, thank you for your presentation. Number one, maybe, I had a guy on to me the other day. What exemptions are there in or around for the minimal soil cover? I had a guy who's involved highly in ploughing competitions and matches, and he had concerns in and around this. Is there exemptions for those? You know, it's a small amount of areas, but the ploughing matches.
Yes.
And I'm told he had some problems in and around this. So,
David, do you want to pick that up?
Are there exemptions for those people?
Yes, there are exemptions for ploughing matches that take place from the 1st of November up to the 15th of January.
And that's the only time they need
That's the only time that you need the exemption.
Okay, so there's no ties to that. If they are...
No, that's the exemption. That exemption means that they don't have to sow a green cover crop after the ploughing competition is over. That's the exemption.
That's okay. Joe, we'll let our Vice Chair come in now. Okay.
Yeah, Chairman, in relation to the cross-compliance regarding ear tags, there seems to be another concern, certainly by the Ulster Farmers Union and farming organisations, that DARD has been too restrictive and too draconian. And they seem to feel that as a region, we're quite simply being too strict. And there's no recognition given that a farmer may have some cattle that may lose a tag because of inferior quality of tags. And these are tags that have been approved by DARD as a bona fide manufacturer. So sometimes here, farmers can be innocent of the difficulty that they find themselves in. And there's a genuine feeling that, you know, the department have been too strict. I would like to know what can be done to try and relieve this concern, because I think unless there's widespread abuse of undocumented cattle, or no wild cattle that have acquired immunity from diplomatic passports. What's the problem?
I think we are responding to the concern you're raising. I think we have found a way of significantly easing the burden on farmers in regard to the single tag issue. And thankfully I've been able to do that in a way that doesn't increase our exposure to disallowance. I think we are probably at the limits of credibility in choosing a 20 tag limit because of the Commission's use of the word several. But we're sticking with that. We want to be consistent, to have the system steady, not changing. One of the things farmers don't like is where the rules are constantly changing. So for now, we're happy to stick with that and to try our best to defend that through any audit that might result. But as I say, I read out the quotation from the Commission where they expect farmers, in order to receive the payment, to have no tags missing. They take a very hard line on that. As I say, what we have been able to do is find a way through that will reduce the burden of the impact of that on many farmers. And we've looked at the size of the different beef herds in Northern Ireland and other herds, and we are confident that this will make a difference.
I think it's also important to remember that there are thresholds, so people below those thresholds still are allowed the 28 days to replace their tags. It's only people who are above the threshold that start to that are affected by this.
Chairman, the only thing I would say is we've got a pretty stiff letter from Ian Marshall, and it's a fairly robust, strong letter, and I would have thought, given that they're the representative organisation for an awful lot of farmers, 15,000, it would appear that they are still very concerned.
Yeah, I think again, hopefully when we discuss the planned way forward with the Farmers Union, I'm not sure that we have actually. I think we wanted to engage with you first because you did raise the issue with us first. I think that they will find that this a helpful move. But as I say, we're just a little bit concerned to go in a direction where we actually, instead of having the impact we'd hoped, where we would actually end up having to change the rules twice, maybe on the back of an audit that might come next year or the year after. And I'd rather stick with a steady set of rules that are consistent, and then try and deal with this issue through the level of the penalty that we apply.
Thanks.
Okay. I have had some concerns about this for some time, because while I can understand to a point about the 20 tag threshold, certainly those with larger farms, beef finishers, maybe with 1,000 cattle, 1,200 cattle. I mean, if there was a percentage threshold, it still would be fair. Whereas, I mean, someone with 1,000 beef cattle in beef housing now only has a 2% threshold. It's very, very low. I have farmed all my life, so I declare an interest, and especially in the large herds, I would say it would be now impossible to be below that threshold. Because, I mean, if every animal of those 1,000 cattle had double tags today, I'll guarantee in a week there could be 20 animals feeding through feeders could lose tags. So I do think that if there was a percentage put into the system, it still is fair. The 20 is very, very low for the large herds, and that's the concern I have. I mean, I'm not siding with large farms against small farms. It's the rationale of the 20 tags doesn't cover large herds.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's true to say that we have both the percentage and the numerical threshold. From our statistics and our analysis, 90% of herds are affected by the percentage threshold rather than by the numerical 20. But you're right to say the larger herds, and I think the largest herd we're aware of in Northern Ireland is 1,345 at the last count. So those are the ones that are affected by the numerical one. Yep. But it's there that we're caught by this hard auditor interpretation of the word several. And if we deviate from that, we draw the attention of auditors. So if we had an audit and the audit comes in and says 20 is too high, well then 20 has to go down to a lower number. So we're anxious to kind of keep a happy balance here between the kind of views that you're representing and the need to have a reasonably compliant system.
Well, possibly the 20 tags would be acceptable if there was a 28-day period for replacement as there was in the past, because what happened in the past was there was a time frame whereby you could replace those tags. Now, if you're over 20, I was at one guy who had 840 odd cattle and he had 23 tags missing, so therefore he was in cross compliance. He's at a big disadvantage to someone who had 200 cattle and 20 tags missing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And no matter how you work that out, it does not seem fair and equitable.
Yeah.
In my eyes. I think in anyone's eye, I would have thought even the commissioners come over, they're bound to accept that a large herd of 1,000 cattle, you know what I mean? They have to be able to accept that.
It certainly, I mean, how can I put this? It sets a high standard for the farmer.
Absolutely.
But the standard is linked to money. And the Commission's saying here, and the Commission gives them the money, and the Commission says the Commission considers it the farmer's professional responsibility to ensure that all his or her bovines are correctly identified with 2 applied ear tags at all times and not only within 28 days after an inspection. So because they have said that, what they're saying is if you do this, we'll give you the money. So for us to then set a rule in place that weakens that, you can see how that can attract the attention of auditors.
Is it not possible to give them even 7 or 14 days? Reduce that drastically and at least, you know, give those farmers a chance to deal with that?
Yeah, this is where the Commission has said explicitly, I think, that where you give people time to do it, you're not recognising the fact that if you find a significant number, and in many of these cases you're finding a largish number, they didn't all come out on the one day. So their view would be therefore the checking isn't going on a routine and regular basis to pick them up and replace them.
If you had 1,000 cattle, you'd need one man checking tags every day then. And that's impractical.
It's a very high, it's a hard standard, you know, but as I say, we're not ignoring what the committee has raised on this. We're really not. We think this will help. We think farmers will be pleased when they find that the level of fine that they get if such a thing happens is more bearable because of the way in which we have interpreted practicing the application of the rules.
And on a positive note for the farmer that you're talking about, he would fall into the warning letter level, given the easement that Andrew's proposing.
Yeah. I think we need some clear evidence on that.
Just very clearly, taking those 2012 figures, I think it's important to give you that because in 2012, of all the farmers who were picked up as having tags missing, there were 12 who received warning letters. If we repeated that with the new rule that we're proposing, 56 of them, so it would jump from 12 to 56, would only receive a warning letter. There'd be no financial penalty whatsoever. So I think that should be, I think that's very encouraging. It actually represents a complete shift in the balance of whether you get a warning letter. In fact, putting it another way, the majority of farmers would get a warning letter rather than any penalty at all, whereas prior to that, I think it would have been about a very large percentage, maybe 50% or so, would have got the 5% penalty, the highest penalty.
Just before we leave that, if a decision is made to change the rules in respect as the way you propose, what about the farmers that have received penalties this last few months?
Well, one of the things I think would be very dangerous for us to do would be to try to retrospectively change the rules back in time. But, you know, as with just about everything we're doing with CAP at the moment, we're trying to look to the future and get the rules as fair and balanced as we can for the future, but I think it would be dangerous to show auditors that we were revisiting the rules that we actually had in place and had committed to last year.
They were shown to be totally inadequate. Well, Tom McCann, the next question. Okay.
Yeah, the issues have been covered, but they're just one of the things that you're talking about, and you're giving figures about how many less farmers would be affected by what the scenario that you're looking at. Yeah. But that's solely based on your definition of several. Now, will your definition be accepted? And if it's not accepted, then there'll be a heck of a lot more farmers that will be affected than going on the figures that you're giving us today. So what guarantee can you give us that the definition of several that you're using is actually going to be acceptable?
When we choose a definition, we defend it, just as at the present time England is defending its definition in bilaterals with the Commission. So we'll defend it. But what you're saying is, can we give you an absolute guarantee that we will win that battle if that battle happens? I can't be absolutely sure of that. Now, the only response I could have to that would be to say, well, then we need to choose a different number So once you take me away from 20 and you say choose a different number, and the wording in the guidance says several, you know,
We're saying actually the chair is saying go to a percentage, which would be a much fairer system.
yeah. I think the problem we have there is that percentage again doesn't address the word several. So several is a really specific word, and the Commission auditors have said within the UK, they've said, you know, this is the way we want this interpreted. So as I say, you know, it doesn't make us popular, but we kind of have to try and strike a happy balance here.
Okay, Tom Elliott.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks for the presentation, folks. Just a couple of clarification issues. The hedge cutting dates, the issue 3,
Yeah.
if you're going for dates where health and safety is an issue, do you have to apply for those exemptions at the moment?
Hedge cutting dates.
With health and safety an issue.
It says here, hedge cutting exemption, there's no hedge cutting between the 1st of March and 31st of August, but it says hedge cutting between that dates will be permitted where health and safety is an issue.
Well, that's where.
I'm just asking, do you need to apply for that exemption?
No, you don't.
You don't. So if you're on the roadside, for example,
you
or
just go
something
and do
like
it?
that,
Yes,
that
you
should
just
be
go
just
and do it.
done.
Yeah.
And then,
I think, yeah, just to qualify that slightly, yes, there's no application for going ahead with it, but you're still under the requirements of the wildlife order, which would require you not to disturb or destroy a nesting bird. So whilst DARD do not ask anybody on a health and safety basis to come to look for permission, it would still be incumbent on the individuals involved to check that they're
what
not
if there's a
disturbing.
conflict there, Richard, where you're coming at a junction of a very busy road and there's protruding hedge, but there's a nesting bird in it? Which takes precedent?
Well, I think we would need to look into the legislation on that one. But obviously, all I'm pointing out is that from a DARD perspective, we wouldn't require any permissions to do that.
Well, I'm looking at it from a farmer perspective. What's he going to do?
Well, it would have to be referenced to the legislators in relation to the wildlife order to check if that created a risk to the farmer in terms of his compliance.
I think in those circumstances, the wisest advice to a farmer would be to take advice. So in other words, he comes to a position where he finds there's a species of bird in the hedge. It's in an area where the hedge really needs to be trimmed. I would, if I was him, just take advice before.
Yeah, I'm trying to get that advice, Andrew, from you guys, because you're the department, but I can't seem to get it.
No, well, in that we are not the authority that looks after that piece of legislation. But again, from our perspective, as Andrew says, to take advice, that would be, in my view, the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. But again, also I would hope that careful and sense would prevail in that type of situation as well. But again, best to take advice.
The health and safety of human beings also matters, and that would something that would be weighed at that point. So yeah, I think you'd have to look at each circumstance. I don't think it would be right to just say carte blanche. Here's
Probably by the time you'd have applied for this, asked advice, it'll probably be after the 1st of September anyway. Is that what you're saying?
I would hope we could be more the service could be more responsive than that in those kinds of circumstances.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair, I have a couple of other queries. Just there's no movement on the cutting of the trees, and that 100 centimetres is a 3-foot diameter.
Yeah, we just thought that, you know, that's quite a large quite a large diameter. I don't know whether that's 100 centimetres or not, but that is not an insignificant tree. And I think a lot of people would believe that those very large iconic trees should be looked after and protected.
I noticed. Can't just see it now, actually. Yeah. Hedgerow trees with a trunk diameter less than 100 centimetres may be removed on rotation for timber. That's just basically saying you can cut them down for
yes,
your own use.
Yes, that's the current. That was the previous standard as well, so that hasn't changed.
What does it mean, rotation for timber?
Well, it means you can take them out, but you should ensure that you retain a number of saplings in the hedge so that you have a continuous supply of timber growing over the years. That's really what it's meaning, which is good for biodiversity as well as for farmers for timber supply.
Okay. Issue 5 again about the inspection, Chair. Again, I do highlight this, and this came out here again at this meeting. There is no cooperation or very little between NIEA and DARD. And I know that we hear all this talk now about maybe NIEA moving into DARD, but you know, that hasn't happened. The reality of it is you should be working together for the better of, not only for the farmers, but the better of the departments as well, I think. I keep making that point, Chair, and we'll continue to do that. Can you, sorry, under just the item 6 about the tag issue, can you run over your proposal again that might get us over this issue?
Yeah, so whenever a non-compliance is found, so there's a breach, large numbers of animals have a tag missing, instead of applying a weighting to the penalty regime that would be 0.4, it will be reduced to 0.1, and that will drive the majority, based on the 2012 figures, of farmers who are caught in that way into a situation where they get a warning letter rather than a penalty.
So 0.1 is a warning letter as opposed to 4, which is a...
Well, what we have is every status code that's applied at a CII inspection gets a seriousness score associated with it. So if a farmer failed to notify a movement on time or something like that, or the animal had no tags, that would be described as serious and would have a seriousness score of 1. For this, we're talking about a seriousness score of 0.1. But to qualify for a warning letter, you need to add all the seriousness scores together. And if it gets to over 3, it then goes from a minor non-compliance to a low non-compliance. So it goes from the warning letter sphere into the penalty sphere. So if you have a seriousness score of 0.1, you can have 29 0.1s before you get over 3, or get to 3. So that means that those people will fall into the warning letter category.
So yes, so it's just the proportion that gets hit by a penalty falls quite considerably.
Okay, got it now. No movement on electronic implants or microchipping of animals?
I'm not aware of any change there. That wasn't an issue that was raised with us for consideration.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, Alderman Gold.
Just very quickly, and it's been discussed, the hedge cutting. Where is the birds people and all of this here, the road service?
The RSPB
yes.
Would be one of the parties that we would now want to engage with on the issue of the hedge cutting.
Obviously, you take the RSPB and they'll say, what's the birdie? You take road service in or take them in to make a case for road safety. What takes precedent?
Well, first of all, that specific and very narrow issue isn't one that we would encounter very often, so that's sort of an exceptional kind of circumstance. But on the issue we are looking at, which is whether or not there would be a derogation to do hedge cutting in August, which is the big issue of concern, I don't think and obviously we don't want to prejudge the outcome of the consultation, but I don't think it's as straightforward as just simply saying the bird, you know, there's a balance there which we just have to wait and see what the RSPB's position is, but I don't think it's as straightforward as black and white. I think it'll be thoughtful. There might be a balance to be struck there.
There's also the Ulster Farmers Union and the Northern Ireland Environment Link involved in that as well, so they would be. They are part of that consultation process too.
They're the two other parties that had an interest in that issue.
Right. And you see when the hedge cuttings, because any way you can say to farmers, they push it into the side of the road or they cut into the hedge. Some roads you go there after a hedge is cut, it's actually out to the white line, is actually full of big bits of the hedge. And this is something I get all the time.
Yeah. Farmers have a responsibility in relation to the laws that apply to all of us, I think, to make sure that roads are kept in a good state. So that there are rules and regulations that apply to that wouldn't actually be necessarily DARD rules. Those would fall to prosecuting authorities who find that a farmer is is putting material on the road, not cleaning it away.
Thank you.
Okay. On the issue of the tagging issue and on what you propose to do, is it possible to get something in writing in more detail that clarifies it more clearly for us?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to, and I can understand what you've told us to a point, but I think we need a wee bit more clarity around that.
Yeah.
If we could get it, please.
We happily flesh that out for you now. As I say, we wanted to have the engagement, and then we
We've got it then,
start
okay.
to work forward through an action plan on these things.
It's okay. Can I, no other questions, can I thank you very much for your presentation and for coming along today, Andrew. I'm aware that Andrew's moving to Europe next month, so can I wish you very well in that move and hope that it works out well for you.
Thank you very much.
It could probably be our last visit to the committee, is that right?
I think it is, yes.
Right,
So
okay.
it's been good working with you.
Wish you well in your new post, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. We move to agenda item 8, written briefing, SR 2014-295, the Seeds and Malicious Amendments Regulations Northern Ireland 2015. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at page 98 and 99 and briefing papers from the department at pages 100 to 114. Can I advise members that the regulations last came before the committee on the 21st of October 2014, at which stage no issues were identified with the policy. The purpose of the regulations is to implement a regime to control wild oat in the area of sale production. No issues or concerns have been identified by the examiner or statutory rules. Can I seek comments from members? If content, can I put the question? The Committee for Agriculture and Rural Development has considered SR 2014-295, the Seeds Malicious Amendments Regulations, NI 2014, and has no objection to the rule. Great. Okay. Agenda item 9, written briefing SR 2014-299, the foil area complementary angling permit, river fin and river foil regulations, NI 2014. I refer members to memo from the clerk at pages 116 to 117 and papers from the department at pages 118 to 123. I advise members that the regulations last came before the committee in June 2013 and no issues were identified with the merits of the policy. At this time, there was no draft SR available for committee consideration, the draft only becoming available to DARD in March 14 and then forwarded to DSO for approval. The purpose of the regulations is introduce a new complementary one-day angling and group permit for registered schools and introduce classes of person who will also receive complementary permits. Can I seek questions from members on this? If not, I put the question to the committee. The Committee for Agriculture and Rural Development has considered SR 2014-299, the foil area complementary angling permit, river fin and river foil regulations NI 2014, and there's no objections to the rule. Great. Agenda item 10, correspondence. Can I refer members to the table correspondence of pages, what pages are those?
Pages 5.
Pages 5, from the Rural Community Development Support Service. Can I seek agreement to write to DAR to ask what plans it has to retender for the retender of the rural support contract? Okay. Can I refer members to the correspondence received at pages 127 to 151? Are members content to action correspondence as suggested on the index sheet at pages 125 and 126? Right. Agenda item 11.
Just about the ATI committee and the going for growth. We had been talking about some sort of cooperative approach to that.
We did have a meeting, yes, that's right.
We had a meeting with the two chairs, had a meeting, and it was agreed that there would be a joint meeting. The two committees would come together and look at their next Going for Growth progress report. So I think it's expected in Easter. But now they also agreed that if there were aspects that either committee wanted to look at, so the Farm Business Improvement Scheme is something that our committee is probably going to be more interested in than that we can do that separately as well, and as well as we're keeping each other informed.
Okay,
But it's
thank
probably
you.
going to be post-Easter.
Thank you.
Okay. Agenda item 11, forward work programme. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at page 153 to 154 and to the forward work programme on pages 155 to 159. Can I ask members to note that due to delays at the European level, the new RDP is unlikely to be signed off and finalised in the timescales previously thought likely. There will be a delay of between 4 to 6 weeks. This could affect two briefings scheduled for the committee. Two briefings are: one, the briefing on the Farm Business Improvement Scheme, scheduled for the 11th of February, and the briefing on the final RDP, scheduled for the 3rd of March. Can I suggest that the briefing on the Farm Business Improvement Scheme goes ahead as normal, as this committee is aware there are some concerns over the scheme as proposed. The scheme also recently got an extra 1 million in the 2015-16 budget for preparation of business plans, and we can also explore that aspect. That leaves us with one potential gap in the forward work programme, and that is the 3rd of March. The clerk has made some suggestions at the bottom of page 154. Can I ask members to take a few minutes to consider and indicate if any of those topics are of interest to them? 154. Okay. There's a number of issues there that we could possibly look at.
You might have your own, obviously.
You might have your own, you know, I mean.
I just picked a few out of the hat.
What about the first one even? Members, Professor Chris Elliott to brief the committee on review into the integrity and assurance of food supply network.
It's a renowned study. He's been over to, I mean, he's presented at Europe, he's presented to the Westminster Committee, you know. It's, I think, considered one of the best.
That from Queen's University?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we haven't heard from him.
Yeah,
since.
yeah, good idea.
Is there anything in that about the regulator?
About the grocery code adjudicator. Do you know something I'm not entirely sure, but I have been thinking that you might want to post Easter and post the election, Westminster election, go and see and visit over to England and actually visit the grocery code adjudicator herself. You know, maybe something the committee wanted to do as a visit, sort of in May or June, you know.
Just noticed in recent reports in English press where many on the mainland are very concerned that the grocery code adjudicator has no teeth. No. And it's an issue we have said from word go that if she has no teeth, you know, she's not making any difference, I don't think, to the
Assume.
So it's maybe we could separately make representations again, maybe in regard to that too.
I think it'd be worthwhile.
Wouldn't do any harm, maybe.
Yeah, I think we need to look at that sometime, Chairman.
Yeah.
Don't know whether just a one-off briefing would be enough on it.
No, maybe not. Yeah, but it's.
But I'm easy with.
Yeah, but it's something that could be looked at. I think if the grocery code adjudicator had some teeth, it could make some difference. But it looks at the moment that it has no teeth. It's not.
I think you probably get more out of an informal, behind closed doors meeting with her than you would maybe out of a formal.
I would have thought so.
I think it might be useful to have a visit with her. You know, again, I was thinking post-Easter and post-Westminster election, you know, you'll be busy between Easter and Westminster, so.
But it was interesting that on the mainland even, you know, there's a lot of concerns there with unions and all that you know, the adjudicator has made absolutely no difference, you know.
Yeah. I think, Chair, in fairness, whenever the position was set up, there was reservations as to how much teeth this position will have, and I think it's been borne out now, what you're saying, it doesn't have anything, you know.
I think this committee actually wrote to the relevant committee at Westminster to highlight our concerns.
You had they actually, this committee also had the Minister for Business, BIS, Business Investment and coming to the second. And you did actually have the grocery food adjudicator at this committee as well. You already had a meeting with her.
Why have a grocery adjudicator, you know, why have someone, you know, in place if they cannot make any difference? It doesn't seem
You can't,
right.
you haven't got anybody or anything there that's going to challenge the big grocery chains. And that's the problem. And that's what this person was brought in for.
She can actually, if the large retailers do something that is wrong, in effect, she can challenge that, but trying to buy food at the cheapest price possible and ask business, that's not doing anything wrong, you know, as far as they're concerned. So that's the problem you have.
But was that not what she was brought in primarily to do?
Yeah, that's what we understood at the primarily.
Exactly.
Investigate bad practice or malpractice,
That's
but
right.
unfortunately,
You may
she's not getting complaints, because I think there was a TV programme who said, I thought it was very good, that if you complain to the grocery food adjudicator, it's like complaining to the headmaster about a school bully, knowing that you're going home on the bus
Right.
with the school bully, you know, so...
And the remit's only over, what, shops that have a turnover of $1 million a year or something like that?
It only covers the
There's no remit
10
over processors?
Yeah, it doesn't cover the processors.
No.
It doesn't cover anybody else who buys.
I think the
In fairness, that would cover enough people if she had the teeth, I think, because they're not a big retailer to turn over $1 million, if you understand. It's a very small, actually, retailer. It would
Are you happy enough then if maybe I look at something that, are you happy enough to do that post-Easter?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay. So end May maybe, and maybe have Professor Elliott in the meantime?
You happy enough with that? Yep. Okay. So, then everyone's agreed with the forward work programme at this stage then, okay? Agenda item 12, have we any other business?
I was thinking, is there any merit, if you're going across the water there to meet her, to also broaden it out to look at because obviously her parameters are set by the legislation that's set down there.
Well, I think if you were going across the water, yes, you would have to widen it. I don't think you'd go just to meet one person. It would be foolish to do that, I think.
She could reasonably say to you, well, I'm operating within the parameters that are set for me.
I'll look at setting up maybe a meeting with the sponsoring minister.
Something like that.
Something like that you have
I mean, I'll not just take us over for 1 or 2 meetings. I'll try and build a few other
No, you'll have
interesting
to
things around it.
while, yeah.
Yeah. Oliver wants.
Any other business? Yes.
Just a couple of very quick items, Chair. One of them is, could we find out a wee bit more about broadband? Who could we write to find out where exactly they are with broadband in their area, and what way are they going through the, for example, the postcodes? See what areas are benefiting and where they're benefiting at this present time. That's the first one.
Okay.
And the second one is, can I propose that we maybe look at reciprocating the visit today by our counterparts from Leinster House and going down there for a meeting with them.
I think they're
I'm
going
going
to
to
give us an invite at some stage. no?
Yeah, I'll contact their clerk there and get
Very
that
good.
set up.
Okay, any other business? Everyone happy enough? Okay.
Chair, there was an issue came up a fortnight ago around the issue of single farm payments not being allowed on forestry areas or whether native fees. There's no response back, I'm assuming yet? No.
Yeah,
Probably
seems
should have
quite
been in the
unfair
packet.
to encourage people to plant trees now. Okay, agenda item 13, date and time of next meeting. The next meeting of the Committee for Agriculture and Rural Development will take place on the 3rd of February 2015 at 1 p.m. and note 1 p.m. in room 30.
Could I give me apologies for that meeting now?
Okay. Declare the meeting adjourned.
Assembly Committee Room